Imagine this. You're standing inside a brightly lit store, holding your current phone in one hand and the new one in the other. The difference feels obvious. The screen is sharper, the edges smoother, the camera better. Everything about it feels like an upgrade. And the price doesn't feel as heavy as it should because it's broken into monthly payments. It's not $1,200, it's just a small amount each month, something manageable, something that blends into your existing expenses. And in that moment, the decision doesn't feel like a financial move. It feels like a lifestyle adjustment, a reward, a small step forward into something better. And you tell yourself it's worth it because you use your phone every day, because technology matters, because staying updated feels important. And without much resistance, you make the decision. You upgrade. You walk out feeling slightly ahead, slightly elevated, like you've improved something in your life. And for a while, that feeling stays. The phone feels faster, smoother, more responsive. You notice the difference in small moments, scrolling, taking photos, opening apps, and those moments quietly reinforce the idea that you made the right choice. But over time, something changes, not in the phone, but in your awareness. The novelty fades, the speed becomes normal, the camera becomes expected, and what once felt like an upgrade becomes baseline. And that's when the real story begins, not at the moment of purchase, but in what follows. Because the cost of that decision doesn't exist only in what you paid. It exists in what that money could have become if it had moved in a different direction. Because $1,200 is not just $1,200. It's potential, it's time, it's growth that never had the chance to start. And when you zoom out, that small decision begins to look different. Not wrong, not irrational, but more expensive than it appeared. Because money doesn't just sit still. It either compounds or it disappears. And every decision quietly pushes it in one direction or the other. And most of the time, we don't feel that movement because it happens slowly, silently, over years, not in the moment when we make the purchase. Around this point, if you're starting to realize that small upgrades often carry invisible long-term costs, you're on Andrew Fiance, where we break down the deeper psychology behind money and modern decisions. So take a moment to like, share, and subscribe, because once you step back, you begin to see that the phone was never just about the phone. It was about how we perceive cost, how we discount the future, and how easily we trade long-term growth for short-term satisfaction. As you look deeper, the pattern becomes clearer. The decision to upgrade is rarely about necessity. It's about perception, about feeling current, aligned, updated. And that feeling is subtle but powerful. Because in a world that moves fast, being outdated feels uncomfortable, even if it doesn't actually limit your life. And this discomfort creates a quiet pressure to keep up, to refresh, to stay in sync with what's considered normal. And the problem is that normal keeps shifting. Every year there's a new version, a new improvement, a new reason to upgrade. And each time, the decision feels small, reasonable, justified. But what you don't see is how these small decisions accumulate, not just once, but repeatedly, every few years, every cycle, turning into thousands over time.
And when those thousands are removed from your financial path, they don't just disappear. They remove future growth, future compounding, future options. And that's where the real cost begins to emerge. Not as a single number, but as a gap between what is and what could have been. Because if that same money had been directed differently, invested, saved, allowed to grow, it wouldn't stay $1,200. It would evolve, expand, multiply over time. And this is where the number starts to stretch towards something much larger. Not instantly, but gradually, through the quiet power of compounding, turning small, consistent decisions into significant long-term outcomes. And this creates a deeper realization. The cost of modern consumption is not in the price tag, it's in the opportunity cost, the invisible future that gets replaced by present comfort. And this trade-off is not always wrong. Sometimes it's worth it. Sometimes the experience matters. But the problem is that most people don't see the trade clearly. They only see the immediate benefit, not the long-term exchange. At the same time, something else begins to happen. Your baseline shifts. Once you upgrade, your expectation changes. You get used to better, and going back feels like a downgrade. So the next upgrade becomes easier, more automatic, less questioned. And over time, this creates a cycle, not of need, but of expectation, where maintaining a certain level becomes part of your identity. As this cycle continues, the financial impact becomes less about individual purchases and more about patterns. Because wealth is not built or lost in single decisions, it's shaped by repeated behavior. And when upgrading becomes a pattern, the cost compounds in the opposite direction, not building, but eroding potential. Slowly, quietly, without creating a clear moment where you can point and say, this is where it went wrong. And this is where psychology plays its strongest role, because humans are wired to value the present more than the future. Immediate satisfaction feels real, while future growth feels abstract. And because of that, we consistently prioritize what we can feel now over what we can only imagine later. And companies understand this deeply. They design pricing, marketing, and experiences to reduce the friction of spending and increase the appeal of upgrading, turning large decisions into small monthly commitments, turning long-term costs into short-term comfort. But once you become aware of this pattern, something changes, not in the world, but in how you interact with it. You start seeing decisions differently, not just in terms of price, but in terms of trajectory. Where is this money going? What is it becoming? What am I trading for this moment? And these questions don't stop you from spending, but they make you more intentional, more aware, more aligned with what actually matters to you. Because the goal is not to avoid every upgrade, it's to understand the weight of the decision, to see it clearly, to choose it consciously instead of automatically. And that clarity creates a different relationship with money, one where you are not reacting to every new release, every new version, every new upgrade, but deciding based on your own priorities. Eventually, all of this leads to a final realization. The difference between financial growth and financial stagnation is often not dramatic. It's not about one big mistake or one perfect decision. It's about the accumulation of small choices, repeated over time, each one slightly shifting your trajectory, either toward building or toward consuming. And most of these choices don't feel significant in the moment. They feel normal, expected, even harmless. But over years, they define your outcome. And this is where the perspective shifts completely. The phone is no longer just a device. It becomes a symbol of a larger pattern, a reminder that every dollar has direction, every decision has a timeline, and every upgrade carries an invisible trade-off, not always negative, but always present. And once you see that, you can no longer ignore it, because awareness changes behavior. You begin to pause, not to avoid spending, but to understand it, to see the full picture, the immediate benefit and the long-term cost, the experience and the opportunity. And that pause, that moment of awareness, becomes one of the most powerful tools in your financial life. Because in the end, the real cost of a $1,200 phone is not the price you pay today. It's the future you quietly give up in exchange for it. And that future can be small or significant, depending on how often the pattern repeats. If this video made you rethink how small everyday upgrades can shape your long-term financial future, then you're already seeing what most people miss. This is Andrew Finance, where we go beyond surface-level spending and explore the deeper systems shaping your money decisions.
If this video opened your eyes, make sure you subscribe, because what you learn today can save your future tomorrow.